High Commissioner B.N. Reddy, distinguished guests, members of the Indian community, let me say what a great pleasure it is to be back in Kuala Lumpur after, I must admit, something of a gap. It is today for us very much a part of our custom and our tradition that we never leave a place without meeting the Indian community. So, I'm really very, very happy to meet you. It's been a long day. I left my previous stop very early in the morning, but it's been a very good day. I had the privilege of spending time with the Prime Minister, discussing with him the future directions of our relations, sharing with him the message from our Prime Minister about how he saw our ties unfold. I had a very good meeting with my counterpart, Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan. I met a number of CEOs, and obviously for me, this meeting in many ways is the culmination of the day. Where we are concerned, India and Malaysia as two countries, about 9 years ago in 2015, we launched what was called an enhanced strategic partnership. And next year, in a way, we would have completed a decade, and you could say it would be the second decade of what has been intensive engagement between us. It's an engagement which has seen trade grow to about $20 billion annually, where we have at least, my own suspicion is the figures are higher, but at least about $8 billion in terms of cross investments, where in a range of domains today, our societies, our governments, our countries interact very closely. But having said that, as we enter the second decade of this enhanced strategic partnership, I think it is equally important we reimagine this relationship. We raise our levels of ambition. We think about practical steps which would realize that sense of closeness which is so strong in both countries. So a lot of my discussions today were actually in that direction. Some of it pertain to what we normally do, what we have traditionally done in this ties for many years. We spoke about better market access to each other, about increasing the scale of investments, about how to grow the air connectivity between us, about how to improve the mobility regimes. And we are appreciative of the fact that today many more sectors in Malaysia are open to skills and talents from India. We discussed how to increase tourism. And again, we very much appreciate the steps which have been taken at this end to encourage Indian tourists to come. We contemplated what would be the impact of stronger financial connections, especially today, many people in India are connected to the world through the UPI system of cashless payments. This has a very positive impact both on business, on tourism, even for mobility. We wanted to also intensify our educational connections. For some time now, there have been discussions about how to bring some of the premier Indian educational institutions like the Indian Institute of Technology to Malaysia. About how through mutual learning and experience sharing, we could strengthen our TVET capabilities, because that is very much key to the economic future of both countries. Also, again, this has been something which has developed steadily over the last decade, how to strengthen our defense cooperation. We already have a strong bonding both in the Air Force and the Navy, but how do we deepen that? But most of all, we looked at what are the new areas: renewable energy, semiconductors, digitally driven growth. So these were really the conversations I've had today. And I think in this matrix of possibilities actually lies, in many ways, the future direction of our ties. So what I do want to assure you is, certainly from the Indian perspective, this is an enormously important relationship for us. It's a very close relationship. It's been one where we've been very mutually supportive. As an example, I should say we are both in the coming years contemplating being non-permanent members of the Security Council again, and we'll be supporting each other in that endeavor. We also value the fact that Malaysia will become the chair of the ASEAN in 2025. There is a lot that has been for us under discussion with the ASEAN. We hope that Malaysia's leadership would give it a clearer direction and more definitive outcomes. So this is really the sum and substance today of the relationship and where we stand. And I thought you're all stakeholders in this relationship, so it is natural that I would like to share it with you. But while I speak about India and Malaysia, the fact is we are not, two countries living in isolation from the rest of the world. The world is today a much more complicated place. It is more turbulent, it is more volatile. We have seen, for example, the impact that COVID has had on all of us. All of us, just not personally, but as societies, as countries, the enormous disruptions that it caused. We are still experiencing today what happens when there is conflict anywhere in the world. That in this day and age, conflicts can no longer be contained in that particular geography. Whether it is what is happening in Ukraine or what is happening in the Red Sea, that something far away has a very disruptive implication for our lives. We see every day what happens when climate events happen. That climate today is disrupting food production. If prices go up or shortages happen, some of it is certainly an issue of markets, but a lot of it is also the implications of changes in nature. So why I mention this is when India and Malaysia prepare for an era of closer relationship, I think we have to bear in mind that we are together actually contemplating a much more difficult world than the one we have grown up with in the last generation. And one way by which we can be of great support to each other is really to build on these very special factors of our ties. The fact that we trust each other, the fact that on crucial matters we've been reliable for each other, the fact that in many ways, both physically and I would say culturally, emotionally, we are much closer to each other. So today, when countries actually are working out partnerships, many of these partnerships are actually based on this sense today of trust, of closeness, of reliability. And this is the world in which we are living in, and this for us is actually a new opportunity to refashion ties with each other. Now, having said that, I also know that it is natural that for our diaspora anywhere in the world, there's great interest on what is happening in the world, what is happening at home. I think most of you know what is happening at home. So we have some big decisions to make in the coming weeks. and at least as someone who has a clear interest and participation in it, I will leave that matter there. But having said that, I think there are other things which are happening at home. Perhaps the most important is that India has rebounded from the COVID, that we are today one of the fastest growing large economies of the world, that we are back to that 7% growth rate. And when you look at that today, 10 years ago, we were the 11th largest economy in the world. Today, we are the 5th. In the next few years, we'll probably be the 3rd. So that sense of momentum today and the confidence that comes from it, the greater production, the greater consumption, that ability, you can actually feel today that buzz and energy in India, which is driven by a very strong economy. But it's not just growth, it's also what kind of growth. And one of the big changes which we have seen is that growth has actually been very much more inclusive than in the past. That it is not just big cities that are growing, it is not just the question of the numbers of a nation. You can actually see this percolate down to the furthest corner in the most effective manner. And a large part of that is because today growth for us and governance for us is driven very much by digital technology. That India's embrace of technology in the last 10 years has actually been a game changer. And when one looks at the scale of that, and this was something I was discussing with the Prime Minister here today, that one of the basic obligations of any government anyway is to make sure that those in need in their societies, that they get the requirements that they want. But the challenge for the government, for any government, is to make sure that it goes to the right people, that it doesn't go to the wrong people, and it doesn't get siphoned off. And that's actually been the challenge, particularly in India, which we have grappled with for many, many years. But today, whether it is food support, which 2/3 of our population actually gets on a regular basis, whether it is today loans for people to start their own business, which 1/3 of the country gets, whether it is today free or subsidized health access, which more than 1/3 of the country gets. When you look today at housing, houses which are built by the government and given to the vulnerable people, you are actually today looking at massive numbers, and the right numbers, the right people are actually getting the benefit. And one of the comparisons which I make is many of these programs, they are today the size of the population of countries, sometimes the size of the population of multiple continents. So when we speak about food support, we are talking 815 million people who day in, day out actually get their rations from the government, who are therefore assured that whatever happens in the world, whatever happens in India, they will never go hungry, their nutrition and health levels are protected. Or when we speak today about giving loans, especially a lot of these loans go to women, we are talking of 450 million loans. Even housing, there are today 200 million people in India who have got houses in the last 10 years from the government. 200 million people is 1.5 times the population of Japan. Even, many of you would be familiar with the fact that people were using firewood in the kitchen and the health damage that it was doing. Now, when these were replaced by gas cylinders, the beneficiaries of that are 90 million people. That's like actually dealing with entire Germany's kitchen problem at one point. So think about it. The scale of the change, the population, the lowest, and the people who actually were the most in need, lowest in terms of income. And the cumulative impact of all of this is that actually 250 million people have come out of poverty. And as you can actually sense that, movement up. But while all of that is happening, other changes are taking place as well. And I think those of you who go to India regularly would see it. One of the big changes is actually in infrastructure. Now, to be honest with you, there was a time we used to come to Malaysia and admire the infrastructure here. We still do. But today, you can see those changes in India. That we have built 10 years ago, there were 75 airports in India. Today, there are 150. We have built 9 to 10 new airports every year for the last 10 years. Every 2 years, 3 cities in India actually get new metros. And every day, and I say this with a country with whom we have a good road building history, every day 28 kilometers of highways are made. So this is actually the change also, which is taking place in India. That change is not just in the physical appearance and the physical assets of the country. The other big transformation is actually today in the quality of the people. That if one looks at the education, starting actually from the school, I would even say preschool, as a member of parliament, all of us have funds which we give for a particular constituency for development work to take place. In the district which I focus on, one of my objectives which I support is something called Smart Anganwadis, which is preschool, where you actually start little kids with digital skills very, very early. So it starts very early. Whether it is schools, and you also know that one of the challenges of schools was also the toilet issue, which fortunately by now has become history. But school retention, the fact we want people not just to start schooling but carry on. Then to ensure that the gender balance, again, there was a big gap which we have at last closed between girls' attendance and boys' attendance in schools. Then when you look beyond schools at challenges you are also familiar with, skills, vocational training, universities, colleges, medical, engineering. And each one of this has actually taken off. Again, I give you a figure which I would ask you to reflect on. The last 10 years has seen 7,000 new colleges in India, which means 2 colleges a day have come up in India. That would give you that sense really of transformation. And it's not, again, just a multiplication of institutions. As someone who visits a lot of these places, I can actually see the difference in behavior. The fact that young people today are more innovative, that people still in college, sometimes even in high school, are talking about taking out patents, that people in college have even their startups. So today the levels of confidence, the mood, the progress, the sense that a lot has been achieved, that is today very, very strong. And in each domain, it has found some expression. People in business would certainly say it's much easier to do business in India. It's still far from perfect. I quite accept that. But I think there's no question that we are definitely moving in the right direction. I think for the general public, the ease of living has also improved tremendously. That if, in fact, one of the issues which we are constantly asked to look at is what are the old laws and old regulations that we don't need anymore? Every department actually for the last few years has, because typically in the bureaucracy, you love to add rules and regulations. I know that, all of you know that as well. But to actually get people to say, look at what is antiquated, what is unnecessary today. Why do we need the verification? And some of it, for example, can be very simple. The idea of a self-affidavit, that you sign, you are responsible for a document. It makes perfect sense. It works 99.99% of the time. So how do we today ease the burden of unnecessary regulations and over-compliance on average citizen? And you can see that in services. Today, paying income tax in India, actually not just paying, getting a refund, it's so much faster. Sometimes it's a matter of a few weeks. Or passports, that what used to take months actually today takes weeks, sometimes even days. So the picture which I'm trying to communicate to you today is really of a far more confident nation, far more optimistic about its future, very much more capable, that when we speak today, of today's India, we are actually talking of a Chandrayaan moon landing. We are talking of a 5G technology telecom stack. We are talking of making our own vaccines and inventing our own vaccines. We are talking today of technologies like drones. We are talking of chips. So these as people whose hearts and minds are very often back home, I do want you to appreciate that there has been a very, very solid foundation that has been laid. And this foundation is likely to actually take us into a much higher trajectory and a higher orbit in the times to come. Now, I've dwelt a little bit at what happened at home. Let me speak a little bit also about what happens in the world and how do we respond to that. I referred to the impact of the COVID, and I did so because, but honestly, I don't think any of us could have imagined anything so devastating, and surely in all our livelihoods, in all our lives, we'd never really have to go through something like this again. But it was a time of enormous test. And when we responded to the world, we, of course, did so trying to build up our own capabilities, but we also did so trying to respond to the world's capabilities. And the fact is that a country, when the COVID started, the world was worrying how this country would fare. After a year and a half, this was the country which was actually supplying vaccines to 99 other countries across the world. Now, COVID was an enormous disruption, but it's not the only one. I spoke about conflicts, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Gaza, and what happened in Sudan some months ago. Now, what does it do for a country which has such a large diaspora, which has so many of its citizens working abroad, studying abroad, traveling abroad? It actually creates a situation of exceptional responsibility. So one part of it is, what you respond to the world, yes, by helping and contributing to that particular need. But you also respond to the world where your own citizens are concerned. And what we have seen in recent times is that wherever today, our community is in distress, where they are in danger, we are there to secure their back. And you saw that. You saw that in Ukraine during Operation Ganga, in Sudan Operation Kaveri, in Israel during Operation Ajay. We had it in Afghanistan, Devi Shakti. So even recently, we are having a situation. It's not a big deal, but for the people who are involved, it is very big. That there are a few families who were stuck in Haiti. So today we have given our diaspora, our community, that sense of confidence that go out in the world, do what is obviously good for yourself, but we are there behind you. And I would put it to you that that is not a small achievement. Now, when a country rises, because as we get bigger, we are approaching a $4 trillion economy, our capabilities are growing, it is also natural that expectations of India will grow. So you can't have the rewards without the responsibilities. That if we want to be well regarded in the world, we also have today to get ready to take the responsibilities of the world. And that is something today that the country is stepping up to. That on a whole range of situations, it could be natural disasters, it could be earthquakes somewhere, it could be a civil war in Yemen, earthquakes like you had in Nepal or Turkey, or it could be like what is happening in the Red Sea. That today, actually, there are 21 ships of the Indian Navy who every day work there to keep shipping secure. That they have actually rescued from pirates, from drone and missile attacks, a number of ships, crewmen, including some from this region, who every day undertake the searching and boarding and searching which is necessary really to keep the maritime traffic there safe. So the sense I want to share with you today, yes, we are changing, we are growing at home, many transformational developments are happening. But we will also see an India which will step out more in the world, which will contribute through the power of its production, through the power of its capabilities, sometimes through the power of its ideas. That it may be something like propagation of solar energy. You know, we founded something called the International Solar Alliance. Or it could be something like changing our lifestyle. It's a power of the idea there that you can actually fight climate change by adopting a much more climate-friendly lifestyle. Even changing our food habits. The propagation, for example, of millets. Millets as a way which is because it consumes less water, it is greener, it is more nutritious. So in different ways, even wellness, yoga. I mean, if you see in the last decade, when we do the International Day of Yoga, actually today we track beginning from the international date line all the way through, and there's not a single country in the world which doesn't actually celebrate yoga and which doesn't today realize the value of yoga. So this, the power of the economy, the power of greater contribution, the power of ideas, and the power of being fair, of doing the right thing. Because last year we had the presidency of the G20, and we used that presidency to actually ensure that the global South got what was the right thing for them, that many of their issues, that they were not left behind in the world's march towards progress and prosperity. And it could be the African Union's membership, but it was also equally the real bread and butter issues today of the world. How do you deal with debt? How do you deal with trade disruptions? How do you deal with currency problems? That a lot of countries today can't trade because they don't have access to the right currency in the right volumes. So this fairer India, more responsible India, more contributive India, that is today the India, I think, which engages Malaysia. So I'm very convinced that today we are actually, India and Malaysia, we are poised to take our relationship to the next level. I think very serious conversations are happening among policymakers to that end. But anything like this requires the full support of society, especially in countries where we have this kind of living bridge between us. All of you, in some way or the other, can contribute to it in your particular professions, in your walk of life. You can also make a difference adding to this relationship. And that is why you have seen today how open we are, how appreciative we are of the contribution of the diaspora. So let me again conclude by today thanking all of you. You have taken time out from your busy schedules to come here. But I do want to say that, for us, each one of you in some way makes a difference. When we speak about the relationship, relationships are not built by impersonal entities. They're not the product just of statements and goodwill. They are actually brick by brick, something which is built by real people in a very meaningful and practical way. Those are people like you. And once again, I want to express my appreciation for all the support that you have given it. And I ask you, please keep doing it. Thank you once again. Namaskar.
Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, yes, Your Excellency, please take a seat. Thank you so much for that brilliant and eloquent overview of New India, the enhanced strategic partnership between Malaysia and India, and the critical role the Indian diaspora here can play. Words of wisdom and insight indeed. The Honorable External Affairs Minister of India has graciously agreed for a short interactive session with our distinguished guests today. To moderate the session, we are fortunate to have Professor Dr. Ravichandran Murthy, who's Professor of International Relations at the Research Center for History, Politics and International Affairs, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. He specializes in South Asian and Indian Ocean geopolitics. It gives me great pleasure to invite to come up on stage to join the Honorable Minister and take over proceedings, Professor Dr. Ravichandran Murthy. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. At the outset, I would also like to welcome you, His Excellency Dr. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister to Malaysia. Welcome, Your Excellency. Well, Dr. Jaishankar is no stranger to most of us. We have seen you on the social media defending India's position and interests in India as well as externally. I believe also you have more than 2.5 million followers on social media.
It's gone up a bit since then.
Oh, it's gone up a bit. Perhaps many people in the audience are also your followers, or at least have seen your TikTok videos or your YouTube videos. Right? I'm sure there will be many burning questions from the audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, some ground rules before we start the session. We have about 30 minutes. So we will take about 2 or maybe 3 rounds of questions. For each round of question, I will invite about 3 questions from the audience. Please put up your hand. And if there are too many hands, then I will probably need to choose. But I will go by segments, segment 1, segment 2, and segment 3. And I will try my best to be as just as possible. So, but it will be a bit difficult if there are too many questions. Please keep your, please state your name and also your affiliation. The questions, I urge you to keep it short and simple without much elaboration, because we want to give the Honorable Minister more time to respond to your questions. With that, ladies and gentlemen, can I now invite the first round of questions? Perhaps 3 questions. Can I see hands? Okay, the gentleman right in front of me here, that you will go first. Can somebody give the microphone to our gentleman here? Right.
My name is Bhaskran, founding secretary of the Malaysia-India Business Council. My question to the Honorable Minister. We sit here staring at the Ashoka Chakra, and Ashoka, after the Battle of Kalinga, denounced violence, said he will never fight again, and promoted peace. That stands in stark contradiction to your India's position on the Ukraine war, for example. Your moral compass held so high, but where women and children are murdered, our own Malaysian Airlines plane shot down in mid-air, flying across Ukraine, and that an international court has found that the missile came from Russia. Why is not India taking a stronger stance against the violence, whether acted out by Russia or by Israel? What is the contradiction between the moral compass and the real politic? We follow your YouTube and TikTok messages, but very often you stand on the Ukraine war, for example, seems ambiguous.
Okay, we get your point. Thank you, Mr. Bhaskaran. Next, I see Professor Ramasamy.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellent Affairs Minister, Dr. S Jaishankar, for a wonderful speech. I am not very sure when Congress was in power, that was the aftermath of Nehruvian non-interference in the affairs of other countries where the diaspora was located. But I think I see a difference after BJP came to power. And I still remember when Vajpayee came to Malaysia, I think he did comment about the state of Indians in this country. So I think, sir, you were talking about the concerns of the diaspora. So are you saying the diaspora, are these Indian nationals, say in Ukraine, Indian nationals in the Middle East? Or are you referring to those Indians who are domiciled, who are citizens like us? But I have not seen, and I think I must give credit to Modi and the BJP. I think the stand is a lot more different from the non-committal Congress regime. But I see a difference. But yet to see the difference when you, especially in separating your overseas citizens and those who were first, our forefathers who migrated to this country, and we have been treated shabbily in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. One more question from this side. Yes, YB?
Excellency, very eloquent speech you made, and I've heard you many times on social media. My interest always has been this, something a bit different. Your biggest and strongest neighbor is China. Somehow, I always felt India and China should become the best of friends. Because when you become the best of friends, 90% of the world is under your hands. And this is not something impossible. And what are the impediments that make you not to be friendly with China? And China is a growing one of the powerful countries in the world. And the little I know about Indian policies, the amount of money spent on so many things just to get ready for the eventuality with them could be better spent on the people of India. Thank you.
Let me start with the Ukraine question. You know, as a general principle, I say this as someone who spent a life dealing with foreign policy issues. It's very easy to be very sharply judgmental and actually say that this represents a high standard of ethics. It can be analytically very easily displayed or projected in that manner. But look at the complexity of real life. We took the position from the start that you are not going to get a solution to this conflict on the battlefield. 2 years have passed. There were many who felt 2 years ago or somewhere in between that maybe they could. I think today many of them don't any longer. If one sees, in this day and age, what conflicts bring, there are actually no winners in a conflict. That at the end of the day, every party and a lot of innocent bystanders or other nations also get ruined or affected one way or the other by conflict. So our position has been here that find a way of bringing this conflict to an end. And very honestly, in some circles, this was not a very popular position at that time. But I say this to you very sincerely as I travel around the world and I look at countries far away, low-income countries, who found their food supplies cut off, who could not afford energy, who could not secure their harvest because they could not get fertilizer, whose trade was so disrupted they didn't have money to settle the bills. Many of them are in debt. All this has happened as an outcome of a conflict, and nobody was even talking about it. So I think it's important here to life, if life were binaries, very clearly this is right and that is wrong, and this is good and that is bad, and this is the one you check and that's the one you cross out. Life would be incredibly simple. You actually, I don't know if you'll need foreign policy. You certainly won't need foreign ministers. But it's, I want to say that, in real life, I mean, you spoke about the Israel issue. Look, in a way, how different the pulls and pressures can be. On the one hand, what happened on October 7th was terrorism. On the other hand, nobody would, countenance the deaths of innocent civilians. Countries may be justified, at least in their own minds, in responding. But you cannot have a response which does not, every response must take into account something called international humanitarian law. And the fact is that whatever the rights and wrongs of the issue, there is the underlying issue of the rights of the Palestinians and the fact that they have been denied their homeland. So, I'm taking that one issue and I've given you 5 different aspects of that issue. And somewhere a solution cannot be that I will pick 2 out of the 5 and leave 3, because you will not get a solution out of that. So the point is, all of us who are in the, I would say, the policy world, who have to take those calls, much of our challenge is how do you get this balance right? That we are today still one of the countries who are in a position, where I go back to India tomorrow. I have the foreign minister of Ukraine visiting me the day after that. We have also been the country who have the opportunity to talk to the Russians very frankly and bluntly on this issue. On different aspects, others have used us to pass messages. And by the way, the same thing applies when it comes to the Gaza-Israel conflict as well. So I put it to you today, this is not an issue of a moral cop-out. This is an issue today of appreciating that real life actually has a whole lot of complexities, and that the considered answers, the sustainable answers cannot be very angular. They cannot pick some facets to the exclusion of other facets. On the diaspora attitude, yes, I would say there has been a big change, no question. And if I were to pick a moment of change, I would say it was probably Madison Square Garden. So when you had that kind of address by a prime minister to a diaspora, it sent its own message. Now, what's the issue in a way? This is, diasporas, by their very nature, it can be an issue of great sensitivity, because their ethnicity or origin may be in one society, their domicile or their nationality may be in another. But we need to get out of that debate of, which one would you respect and how would you reconcile the two. If we actually approach the diaspora as a bridge, that, for us today, the diaspora is an extraordinarily effective bridge to the rest of the world. That if we have today a particularly warm feeling towards Malaysia, a large part of it is because there's such a big diaspora here, the second largest diaspora that we have in the world. And it should be our goal. We should never put the diaspora ever in a dilemma. That for us, we should be supportive. There are many choices and many decisions the diaspora has to make. We cannot make those choices. Every community, once it has settled down somewhere in the world, will judge its own interests and judge its own situation and take the right decisions. Our effort should always be supportive, should always be encouraging, should always actually strengthen the position of the diaspora as a living bridge. On the India-China issue, look, every country wants good relations with its neighbors. Who doesn't? But every relationship has to be founded on some basis. Now, in the case of China, our relationship has been difficult for a variety of reasons, including the fact that we have a boundary dispute. But despite the boundary dispute, over the many years, we actually built up a substantial relationship, because we agreed that while we will negotiate the boundary dispute, both of us will agree that we will not bring soldiers in large numbers to the boundary, and we will never have a situation where there'll be violence and bloodshed on the boundary. So this understanding, which started in the 1980s, actually was reflected in a number of agreements. And those agreements gave the relationship the stability on the basis of which, in other areas, the relationship went forward. So, there was trade, there was investment, there was tourism, there was exchange of people in different walks of life. Now, unfortunately, for reasons which are still not clear to us, these agreements were broken in 2020, and we actually had violence and bloodshed on the border. So this is not a question of you are spending money on the China border, which would be better spent on Indians. My first duty to Indians is to secure the border. I can never compromise on that. So we are today, we are still negotiating with the Chinese. I talk to my counterpart. We meet from time to time. Our military commanders negotiate with each other. But we are very clear that we had an agreement. There is a line of actual control. There is a tradition of not bringing troops to that line. Both of us have bases some distance away, which is our traditional deployment place. And we want that normalcy. So that normalcy, that return to where we are in terms of the troop deployment will be the basis for the relationship going forward. And we've been very, very honest with the Chinese about it.
Okay, thank you. Next round. For those who are putting up the hand on the far corners of this hall, I'm unable to see because of the spotlight is glaring. So if you, now for those who are, can you please move here to the center a bit? And okay, the gentleman over here, please. That's right. The next one is a lady.
Thank you. My name is Soren from Sri Murugan Center, SMC. We are among the largest Indian organization in the country. Your Excellency, first and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government of India, in particular the Ministry of External Affairs and the Indian High Commission, for the numerous programs conducted for the diaspora in this country. Thank you very much. Representing the youth, we would humbly request the programs such as the ITAC program that comes under your ministry to be enhanced and increased. And we assure you that the number of participation, we will fulfill it. Second, this may come under the purview of Ministry of Home Affairs. But I would like to suggest, and when I heard your speech just now, when you said you have the Indians back, one of the things that we are very proud of calling ourselves Malaysians and also Indians. Having said that, one of the things that we struggle here to get will be the OCI card. For many people here, the younger ones especially, they could be third generation. And for them to acquire the necessary documents may be difficult. My suggestion, if the youth that can join the programs by the Ministry of External Affairs be given a fast track or a leeway where they will be, first and foremost, they must be a diaspora to be eligible for the program. Therefore, they should be given some privilege to apply for the OCI card without the normal requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shall we go to this end? Okay, please. The lady with the sari. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Nivya from the Malaysian Administrative Service. Firstly, I would like to say congratulations for your inspiring leadership, putting India on the world stage of world politics. And my question to you, Your Excellency, would be in your book, The India Way, published in year 2020, a para in the Lessons of Awadh, where you ask, will the world continue to define India, or will now India define itself? 4 years down the road, and given India's upward trajectory and set to become the world's third largest economy, how would you rephrase this statement now? Thank you.
Okay, third question. Yeah, that lady over there, right?
Finally. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank you so much. I am Aradhana Takhtani from Times of India. And sir, welcome to Malaysia. I have one question. I would have many questions, but I'll leave it at one. So we talk about India and Malaysia having a civilizational connect and a lot of people-to-people linkages, you know, and given that background and given the fact that Malaysia is taking the ASEAN chair next year, what do you think will be giving the big momentum to your relations, bilateral ties, and second, also to the India-ASEAN relations going forward? Thank you.
First, the gentleman who asked me about ITEC. Yes, we would be certainly happy to look at deepening, expanding the ITEC program. Wherever we find there is a good response, ITEC slots are used. There's a natural inclination to increase that, and I certainly tomorrow before I leave, I'll sit down with the High Commissioner and talk to him about it. On the OCI, this is a problem which is not unique to Malaysia. There are some other places where documentation has been a real problem. And as generations pass, the problem becomes more acute. So if there is an issue here, I know that in some other cases we have kind of gone the extra mile to find a creative solution. I'll certainly be happy to look at it, and we do not want people to be penalized because their circumstances were difficult at some point of time and somebody didn't keep the paper, which they may not have been at that position to either generate or to retain. So let me look at it. I would like to understand the nature of the problem a little bit better, but I am by gut instinct sympathetic to the request. On this question, what I said, which was, the world defines us, and today as we rise, how do we define ourselves? So you would notice that the next book from India Way was called Why Bharat Matters. So I think that was my message, that we have started defining ourselves. And we have started defining ourselves, I think, in a variety of ways, partly by being much truer to our culture, tradition, civilization, by being much more confident about it, by not letting others play mind games with us. There are very clever ways today in world politics to kind of keep you down. So a lot of, but also by taking our own decisions, because what happens, when you don't have confidence, when you have grown up thinking that there is great wisdom in other parts of the world, everywhere except at your own home, then you tend naturally to import solutions. Now, I'm not saying everything imported is bad. I mean, there are many good things which can be imported. But if I give you two examples, during COVID, we got a lot of advice on how to financially respond to COVID. And a lot of the advice we got was actually not suitable to India, because we were very sure in the government that any step we took, a financial measure we took, its benefits would actually not go down, that it would be taken by businesses or by the intermediates on the way. So we disregarded, or we accepted, but we listened, but we did not accept a lot of the advice came our way. We found our own solution. And at the end of it all, actually, when you looked at it, we found the right balance between fiscal responsibility and actually societal responsibility. That we were able even to provide food without actually creating a financial crisis, which a lot of people still marvel about. A second example is actually what happened in terms of energy requirements once the Ukraine conflict started. Had we not stood our ground about buying energy from Russia, very frankly, all of you would be paying much more for your energy, because more countries would have gone into a narrow set of suppliers and actually raised the world's energy prices. So if I looked at it from the perspective of the global economy, and frankly, obviously from my own perspective, we actually did the right thing. So this ability to think for yourself, to be comfortable with your identity, to be proud of your civilization, to be appreciative of your own history, not let your history be written by other people. I think these are all part today of defining ourselves. And I think that process is today why that sense of Bharat is today very much stronger in India. The question, what could, Malaysia, what could India, ASEAN be doing? I think it would take more work for us really to come up with a certain specific set of decisions on how we can deepen our relationship with ASEAN and Malaysia. We know the broad space where some of it is. I spoke about it, say there's new technologies. We know there's more we can do digitally. We know that the sunrise industries offer us more possibilities. We know that greater mobility and more talent sharing is something that will help us. Even, areas like new energies, green ammonia, green hydrogen, these can all be economic changes. We want, but we're also looking at the soft side. We want the people of India and Southeast Asia to appreciate, our shared past, our common traditions, and how to promote more tourism, travel, interactions, young people's contacts. I think all these are part of the mix, and I'm sure you will see something like that emerge in the course of the next year.
Thank you. Next
Prof.
round.
Ravi, I'm so sorry. Your Excellency, Prof. Ravi, I've been advised that the Honorable Minister has to depart now
Okay.
for his next engagement. So we really have to wrap up this interactive session.
I'll stretch it a bit. Maybe we'll just take 2 questions since he raised the mic. He shouldn't disappoint people. So we'll just take 2 questions.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
the last question. Now, who do I select? Who do I choose? The gentleman over here. So, okay. Please, yeah.
Hello, good evening. My name is Murli. I'm president of Bharat Club Kuala Lumpur. Just I wanted to know, as an NRI, when will we get right to vote out here in Kuala Lumpur? The election is nearing. Is there any chance? The second question is,
Only one question, please.
just one small thing. We are very glad that we have got a entry-free visa into Malaysia. All our relatives can come. We want that to be, our ranking on passport validity should shoot up, and maybe, God willing, in your next 5-year tenure, we want it to be in top 20 or 25. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I have to stop because I'm going to ask the last question. I reserve the right as a moderator. Okay, I will let go. Please.
He
yeah.
can sit. No, don't. Better he
Sit
sits
down.
and asks.
Yeah, please.
Lot of questions have been asked and beautiful answers have been given. Very proud to hear our external minister's explanation about India today. Very proud. But all these things are happening. How? My appeal today is, I have returned to almost all the prime ministers earlier requesting one important thing. A great leader, Subhash Chandra Bose, his demise, his ashes are still in a foreign country. The man who gave the country actually expedited the process of transfer of power from Britain to India. One man, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And I see his ashes are so many years already, thank you, years already. His ashes are still in a foreign country. There are many people having monuments and whatnot in India. I'm very sad to say this. And now I'm appealing to His Excellency Dr. S Jaishankar. I've got full confidence in him, and I know that he will make some effort to tell the government of India to bring Netaji's ashes from Japan, from Rinpoche Temple from Japan, back to New Delhi. If they cannot, then you do something else. Sorry for delaying. Anyway, thanks. I wish to thank the minister very much for what he did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The minister has graciously agreed to receive. And one more question from me as a closing. I would like to ask you about how does India sees its own aspiration and that expression of that aspiration as perhaps a regional leader or a global leader? Are we going to see a Pax Indica in the next 10 years? Thank you.
On the NRI voting, right now, obviously, I mean, you were speaking about election, which is a few weeks away. Obviously, the current rules are the ones which would be applied here. I think the challenge when it comes to NRIs voting in the country of domicile is partly one of the process. How do you actually get that done? Because remember, this is electronic voting. Partly an issue of numbers, because we already have about 17, 18 million Indian nationals abroad in different countries. You cannot pick some countries and not have other countries. So, Indians are all over the world. So it has to be, in a sense, non-discriminatory as well. So it's actually an issue which has a lot of complications to it. It is something which continues to be debated and considered. We have to see whether in some way technology can find fixes which right now look otherwise very, very daunting. On your question, as to end the discussion in a way, look, India is today, as I said, 5th largest economy, 3rd largest very soon. If one looks at some of the studies and forecasts, there is a forecast that by 2047 we will actually cross the $30 trillion level, and by 2075 we would actually be the second biggest. The Goldman Sachs says that we'll be the second biggest economy at 52.5. So those are the trends. Now we can argue, I mean, a lot of things happen in real life, but there's no question today that there is a certain momentum, there is a certain growth, and there is certain confidence that this will be maintained there. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the demographics. We are today the most populous country, but if you look at it, again, median age is still not very high. So many of the concerns which other societies have had about going gray very early are not necessarily concerns which India would have to that extent. The third is the nature of the world itself. We today talk so confidently, and rightly so, saying, okay, we are entering an AI era, we are talking chips, we are talking very deep technologies, all of which means that in a way, the metrics of power, we are no longer talking necessarily how much money do you have in your national treasury and how big is your army. There are many other metrics of influence which will happen. So if you ask me, do I envision this rise of India, and am I planning for it? My answer to you would be a yes. So we do talk today, even amongst ourselves in India, saying, look, we will be a leading power, and we have to prepare for a global footprint, because you cannot suddenly one day turn on a switch and say, I want to be global. It's a very, very steady, gradual process of actually establishing your footprint around the world. But having said that, where I would differ with you on the idea of a Pax Indicana, the reality is the world is a very diverse place. There are today almost 200 countries in the world. Pax anything, Pax Americana, I mean, any Pax of a country is actually a distortion of that diversity. It is when one country or one power goes out and dominates other countries, often at great cost to the world and to those countries. That's how you got a Pax Britannica or you got a Pax Romana. So we would favor actually diversity, what we call multipolarity. We think that different regions, different countries must have their fair share. You know, being, we had, my first question was on this issue of, do you have a moral view? To me, a moral view would actually be a just view of the world, that every region, every country has a fair share in global decision making. They're all stakeholders in what we live. And I think that would be much more in tune with Indian tradition, with Indian outlook towards life. We are by nature a pluralistic people. Our own traditions have not been that kind of domination of a pax, whatever it is. So I think that would be the vision, in my view, that we should really share with the world.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. That's all the time that we have for today. I would like to thank the audience for the questions and also our guest of honor who has responded very well, very warm, lucid, and thought-provoking responses. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure sharing this session. And I will pass the session to the MC.
Thank you, Professor. So brilliantly, engagingly, and deftly taking on the questions. Your responses have indeed helped in our understanding of New India's constructive role in the current global architecture. Thank you also to Professor